Hi, my name is Brianne West and I am the CEO and founder of a company called Ethique, the world's most sustainable cosmetics company. I started my first real business back when I was 19 and I was in my first week of university and I was wondering how to make money. What I knew is that I did not want a job like all my friends. They were working in jobs that they hated for people that they didn't really like and they weren't doing something they had any passion for. I've always hated working for other people. I'm just very bad at being an employee and I just knew it wasn't for me. I just don't see any point in doing something if I don't see purpose or meaning behind it. So I remember my first day at university, I came home, I was finally studying what I was really passionate about, which was science. I was very excited about where it was going to take me in the future, and I got home and none of my flatmates were home to talk about. And that was when I thought, right, I don't want that. I'm going to create something of my own that I can have flexible hours. Of course, anyone who has run a business will know that that's not how running a business goes, but that's what I thought at the time. And that was the small spark to starting my first company. I was studying science, as I mentioned, so I wanted to go into something that had a bit of creativity, but a bit of that scientific sort of a bit about it. And skincare kind of appealed. So that really became my first business. It was a normal cosmetics company. It was liquid products, it was moisturizers and face cleansers and everything else. And we started really simply. So my mum hand painted a logo for me. My dad built me a mold and I tested everything on all my friends. It was very ad hoc. I built my own website on a website building thing called Yahoo GeoCities that if you're young enough to remember, you may remember as being sort of the precursor to the Wixes and the Squarespaces that are around about now. Unfortunately, you can still see it on Wayback When Machine, which is a shame because it's probably better never having seen again. I sold on an online message board. I sold to friends and family, and it was really fun. I really enjoyed it until I didn't. And I got bored. It was probably about 18 months in. I enjoyed the creativity, but I didn't see the point. Again, sort of come back to the job aspect. There wasn't any point. I was just telling people stuff they didn't necessarily need. So I thought the solution would be to start another company. So I started Tub. I wanted a different sphere this time, but again, I wanted the creativity and a little bit of science in there. So I created a spoonable fudge, just so you could go and buy it from the supermarket if you were running late to a dinner, and you could take dessert with you. It was delicious. It was equal parts chocolate, sugar, cream, butter, and all sorts of flavors. It was a really creative business. It was a lot of fun. But very quickly, actually, it was almost a victim of its own success because we became too popular. I couldn't keep up with demand. My mum's worked across all my businesses. She was working massive hours trying to make the stuff. We just couldn't keep up, and it was really demoralizing. But again, I got bored because I was just selling people stuff that they really, really didn't need. No one really needs spoonable fudge. So I had a bit of a pause and thought, okay, this isn't working. I'm now going back to part-time at university because I cannot keep doing both of these things. I'm still bored. I'm not studying what I love as full-time. I'm not doing what I love. So what is it about what I'm doing that's not making me happy? So I sold both of the companies, and whilst neither of them were shining examples of how to run a business, I did learn a lot from them. And I learned I love creating stuff. I learned that I love the business side of things. And I also learned that you can't ignore things like the financial and tax aspects. That's clearly very important. Mainly, I learned that a normal business was not enough for me, that I needed something beyond profit. I needed a business that had a purpose. So the third time round, I approached the idea of running a business a little bit differently. I thought about what was really important to me and what were the problems facing the planet. And the big one, of course, is plastic pollution. And we've got to do something about it. I know that the statistics are terrifying, but back then, sort of 8 years ago, in 2012, they weren't as well known as they are now. People weren't quite aware of the scale of the problem. So I signed the paperwork on the sale of the other two companies, and 2 days later I had my new company called Ethique, the world's most sustainable cosmetics company. But it wasn't just sustainable. I wanted to create a company that was ethical in every single aspect. So everyone who was touched by this company benefited in some way, shape, or form. So that's all our suppliers, it's our stockists, it's people who make the products, people who make the packaging, both which are all made in New Zealand. Everything had to be as ethical as humanly possible, which is counter to most businesses these days, unfortunately. Back in 2012, I did know that the environmental impact of plastic was piling up. I knew that 40% of our total plastic usage globally is actually single use and comes from product packaging. So a product is wrapped in plastic and transported wherever, and then that plastic is simply taken off and thrown away. I know that only 9% of all plastic ever made has ever been recycled. People assume that when they buy a plastic bottle or a container or whatever and pop it in the recycling bin, they think, okay, I've done my best, that will go and be made into something else. But statistically, it won't be. I knew that a typical shampoo is about 75% water. I knew that a conditioner is 90% water. And it made absolutely no sense to me that we package up a product that's 70 to 90% water, package it in plastic, and then send that around the world to use in a room full of water. That is completely illogical. So our bars, our products are exactly all the active ingredients in a liquid product. They're exactly what you would expect in that bottle, but just none of the water. It's a really seemingly obvious solution to a big problem. So I call this company the world's most sustainable for a lot of reasons. The number one is that we save a lot of plastic bottles. We have just hit 9 million plastic bottles earlier a couple of months ago, and we're about to tip over 10 million, which is a real milestone. When I started, I was a 24-year-old, naive, but big thinker. I said that I wanted to save 1 million plastic bottles by 2020. Well, it's 2020 and we've just done 10. So that is a big achievement for us. We package our bars in compostable packaging, so they are literally waste-free. You can pop them in a compost heap. You can recycle it if you want to, but as I just mentioned, recycling is hardly the saviour that many people think it is. So composting is your best bet. But we go so much more than being plastic-free. Businesses are not just a product. So our products are, of course, cruelty-free. We don't test on animals, as no cosmetic companies should, and is in many cases outlawed anyway. They are vegan. We don't use animal products because they're completely unnecessary in cosmetic products. They are naturally derived, sustainably sourced, and a critical one is that we're actually certified palm oil free, which is pretty unusual in the cosmetics industry. And if you know anything about palm oil production, you will know that it's one of the leading causes of deforestation on the planet. And unfortunately, that aside, it also has some really horrific human rights abuses associated with its production and manufacture. So we wanted to stay away from that. But a product is only one side of the story. There is all of the operations and stuff that goes into running an ethical business that I wanted to be really concrete on as well. So we are living wage certified, which means that everybody who works at Ethique is paid at least a living wage, usually far above that, but at absolute minimum a living wage. Your team are your single biggest asset, and without the people that work with you, you will have nothing. Teamwork, it's a really twee saying that teamwork makes the dream work, but it's really true. You are nothing without your team. Another facet of looking after people is supply chain. So for a beautiful industry, the cosmetics world is pretty horrendous. The way we look after people who make the ingredients for the products that we use is atrocious, from child trafficking to child labour to what's effectively slave labour. It's not a pretty picture at all. So I wanted to make sure the ingredients that we use are sustainably sourced and ideally directly sourced. So that means everything we work with our producers directly. So our coconut oil producers in Samoa, we work with moringa oil in Rwanda. We know that how those people are paid, we know how they are treated, we know how they then are able to look after their communities, and it makes an enormous difference. We are also the highest certified B Corp in New Zealand, which is pretty exciting. And if you don't know what a B Corp is, it's effectively fair trade for your entire business. It evaluates everything, all your ethics across everything. My favourite part about Ethique is our charitable program. So when I started, again, talking about product being only one side of it, I wanted to be able to give back. And the typical charitable or CSR, so corporate social responsibility program of a business, is about 1% of their profit goes to charity. I didn't want to do that. I wanted 20%. And I got that number from our B Corp certification, actually. That was the number they suggested as what a truly ethical company would give. So that is what we have agreed to. We work with a lot of environmental agencies. We do work with underprivileged youth. And we do a lot of ocean conservation work because naturally that fits with what we do, but it's also what we are passionate about as a team. So that's what we do as a company. But how did we get here? So I was, as I said, a very naive 24-year-old, probably younger than most 24-year-olds mentally. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to save the world. That's always what I've always said I wanted to do. And I believe that business is the way to make a difference on the planet. I believe if you're waiting for government, you'll be waiting a long time. And nonprofits, unfortunately, have the challenge of having to constantly source funding. For-profit businesses and social enterprises have an easier time of it. But I didn't really know how to run a business. The previous two companies hadn't taught me that much about how to actually run a successful business, and I really lacked confidence. So I entered a university competition called Entree, where they paired me with a business mentor, and to go through this competition, I had to write a business plan, which I've always been very scathing of, and I'm still not a huge fan of now. I don't believe you need a 45-page business plan to have a good business at all. And then we had to pitch. And I lost that competition and we're pretty gutted. But however, we are the only business still standing. So I like to think that perhaps we won in the long run. Now, whilst it didn't give me necessarily huge amounts of knowledge, it did give me confidence to strike it out. And that was when we moved into my first factory, out of my house into our own unit. And that was the most amazing feeling. And that was really when I feel it became a real business. Very quickly after moving out, we ran out of money. Now, anyone who wants to start a business, it might seem counterintuitive. If you are a profitable company, if you are growing, you will run out of money. Businesses, young startups, absolutely eat and breathe money. So how are we going to raise it? I am naturally quite wary of angel investors because I've heard terrible stories. And not all of them are true, of course, but you will also always have predatory people out there. If you are going to go down the investment route, great. Just be careful who it is you deal with and have a lot of conversations with people. But I didn't want to do that. Equity crowdfunding had just been legalized in New Zealand, so we could raise up to $2 million a year through equity crowdfunding. And for those who don't know what that is, it's crowdfunding. So you are going out to your crowd and asking for money, but in turn, you give them shares. So it is like a mini stock market. And I really like that because you could bring people on the journey with you, and they would also be your biggest cheerleaders. And also they came with no scary hooks. You know, they didn't have the ability to control your business the way a VC or an angel investor might do. So we launched a campaign in 2015, and in under 10 days, we had raised $200,000, which was pretty cool. We had 152 shareholders. About 2 years later, we ran out of money again. As I said, it's a common theme with a startup. So we turned to crowdfunding again. It worked so well the first time. We had 152 very happy shareholders who'd made a great return. So we thought we'd open it up again. And in 2017, we raised $500,000, $500,000 in less than 90 minutes and brought on 352 shareholders. And now, 3 years later, all those shareholders are very happy because they have made very, very good returns. And they've invested in a company that they believe in that has a purpose, again, beyond making money. Ethique is now in 20 countries. We have scaled from being a tiny New Zealand company and 3 or 4 stockists around New Zealand to being in over 3,500 around the world. And most of those retailers have come to us. And that's because, again, I keep talking about it, but that's because we have purpose and a story and a reason that people believe in us. So we've had enormous multinational retailers come to us. The biggest pharmacy chain in the world is just launched us into stores, a little bit delayed because of COVID, of course, but they came to us. And that really does tell you how important it is to have something beyond just making money. I mean, I'm probably preaching to the choir. So my first tip is don't forget the power of purpose. It is something that not only makes you and your team feel good, and a motivated team is, again, your #1 most important asset, but it also gives you something to talk about to your consumer. It gives your consumer something to believe in and to resonate with. You know, if you reflect your consumers' values, they're going to be that much more loyal. But the caveat there is that you really have to ensure it's true. You can't just have a business that exists solely to make money and then slap some greenwashing on it and say, oh, we're a purpose-led company, because people will see through you. If it's not something that's innate through your company, it will shine through, and that's certainly not what you want. That will not build loyalty. Tip number 2 is to be different. I do a lot of mentoring and I really enjoy it, but one of the questions I always ask my mentees first is, why would I buy your product over somebody else's, over your competitors? And the number of people who tell me they don't know, it's quite astonishing. You have got to stand out from your competitors. A lot of people do it on price, that's fine, but it does leave you less room to move. You've got to find a differentiator, and it cannot just be something small that won't matter to a consumer. You need to think about it from your consumer's perspective, something that will actually matter to them. Is there a subset of people who care about this? Perhaps there is. And don't be frightened of chasing a niche market, because you can expand later. You should never chase the broadest audience possible. So you need to concentrate on your niche and expand from there in the future if that's what you choose to do. But you need to be different. And number 3 is probably my favorite, because I got caught up on this a lot. I probably now mentioned 4 or 5 times in this 20 minutes alone that I was naive, and I was taken advantage of by quite a few people who in the early stages said, I really want to jump on board and help you do this, because I think this is so exciting. And part of having a strong story and a strong purpose is people want to help, which is sweet. But unfortunately, there's people out there who have the best intentions, but perhaps will lead you astray, or they won't understand your values, or for whatever reason, they are not right fit for the business. However, because they are experienced and they do seem to talk a big game, you might be tempted to believe them and go along with what they say. And I did that a lot in the first few years, and it was a shame, and it did lead to some bad decisions that cost me in the long run. So don't be fooled by people just because they can say something that you think sounds intelligent. At the end of the day, you know your business the absolute best. You know the values. You know where you will and won't compromise. And you should never compromise on your values. But you know where the line is. So if you are absolutely adamantly against something, you will not cross that line. Yet someone is telling you to succeed, you need to. You probably don't need to. I cannot count the number of times people have said, oh, you can't raise money through equity crowdfunding. It's what small childish businesses do. You can't hire someone who hasn't got the experience, but they've got the attitude. My team up's made up of, by and large, people under 30. I don't believe in people who say you can't, because it's not done. You have to believe in yourself. Now, it's really hard to distill what has been 8 years of chaos and challenge and perseverance and persistence and massive highs into 20 minutes, but I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight and a couple of tips into what has helped me, what I believe helps other people. And if there's anything you take away, it's that starting a business with purpose beyond making profit is the key to winning these days. It is the key to creating real long-lasting social and environmental change. And it's hard, and it's lonely, and it's tiring. But when you build a team around you who believe in the same things you do, it makes all the difference. So good luck, and I look forward to seeing more.